Dad, I understand that when you were a kid living in Kent, there was an old tramp called Smoky Joe who went around on a bicycle with a lot of stuff. Tell us a little bit about him.
Ah, Smoky Joe, yes. Yes, I met Smoky Joe a few years after the end of the war, when the family had returned to Chislehurst, Kent. And Smoky Joe was a well-known tramp in our part of the world, particularly in the summer, when he got released from prison. He spent the winter mostly in prison, but in the spring he was out on the road, and he had a bicycle which was made up from all kinds of bits of bicycle which he found on scrap heaps. He had no tyres on his wheels, for example. He didn't use his pedals. In fact, I'm not sure that he still kept his pedals. He used to use his feet to drive himself along.
And that's called hobby horsing, right?
I think it's hobby horsing, yes. There were a number of myths about him, and one of them was that he was in fact and belonged in fact to a rather rich family, and had a lot of money, but something happened, whether it was to do with the war, which is just possible, but he was well, one would say clearly mental, but fascinating, and from time to time he would call in at our house in Chislehurst on his way, and my mother used to invite him into the kitchen and give him cups of tea and so on. So we had this contact with Smoky Joe, although I can't remember much of what he said. But some of the events of his life I've included in the following poem. I may say that this travelling man made a profound impression upon me.
Okay, let's hear the poem then.
Okay, it's a slightly long poem, and each section has a heading, but I'll read the section headings out as well. Smoky Joe, a Kentish myth, a cold coming. It's cold, Joe. It's bleeding cold, Joe. On Chislehurst ponds, the gusting snowflakes talcum the feathers of immobilised ducks. Nor is anyone about on the frozen gorse common but you, this winter, this early. And that's how I see him, alone, in white weather, the white roads still, the bushes bonneted, the low sky white and empty of postmen. By his guttural cough I know him, by the composite bite he shoves. Unshaven in ice-fringed balaclava, his face signals wood smoke and anger. Raw fingers rage from his mitts. His patchwork bike is his personal symbol, a man stripped down to the soul's bare needs. The saddle's a limb amputated, a sacking-wrapped stump. Two inner tubes sag from the handlebars like throttled mambas. No pedals, no brakes. The encyclopedist of the rubbish dumps has sufficient bike for all seasons, while the rest of you fair weather drivers trudging galoshes beside roads which white flag in hand have surrendered to dangerous winter. His freedom. He is as free as Kent, as free as the big white horses that roam the wheel, and whose freedom now is a memory in chalk on the sheepish downs. He's everywhere each side of Medway, like the rampant white horses on innsides. He has hobby-horsed the length and dossed in the breadth of an insurgent county. No bench will correct his ways, which scorn the ordered life that fruits in a pension. Do not imagine he ever, or would have, commuted from Seven Oaks to a morning of memos and phone calls. But he would have ridden with Cade or stood with Tyler a Colchester in the big church at Canterbury, testing his scythe on a well-scored thumb. His renunciation. But what had he sacrificed to be free? Was it love? I could never have asked him, and scarcely dare ask myself, when I picture his venerable chimpanzee face greedily sucking the enamel mug of my mother's bounty, unevolved and in the beginning old-faced, old eyes afloat in crucibles of blood, slipping this way and that, radar for random breadcrusts. Unevolved? Or is it the lost face of a child that lived through every wrinkle, even passion, to score the face that claws at the mirror's cage? If love loathes wildernesses, unbarbered exiles, Ixions, bicycles, stinking jails, then love he must have shed with his suit, his family and fortune, when one cockcrow of betrayal he struck out on naked rims. About this poem. It's nomadic. It's been about in 3 counties. Most of it vanished in Oxford, when a light-fingered breeze snatched the sheets from my desk and flung them down the street where my tidy neighbours fed them, grousing, to dustbins. This much remained, the concept of Joe at the hub. The rest was recycled. Well, accidents will happen, even to poems. But Joe's were spectacular. The fates, in their gloomy hierarchies, would press all the buttons at once and bring Joe tumbling down like a cast-iron Christmas tree, flinging its baubles of kettles and pans at the swerving bus, while the khaki heap on the road poured lava of curses down the blushing ears of the seemly suburbs. Joe on Fraser's golden bough. Joe shall perch somewhere on Fraser's golden bough, a ragged owl resting forever symbolic. Or I see him more aptly as a wandering god whom the worldly authorities pursue and annually strip in their padlocked tabernacles. When spring comes, his trousers are burnt in the yard, and the back door is opened to permit him, louseless, shaven and free, to roam Pan-Joe in the woods again, where he sniffs out his cycles like a pig after truffles, has a nose for your frame, my wheels, and her silver bell. From the kit of our dreams, he builds an unsports model of freedom, unlicensed for anywhere but the starlit back lanes beyond routine. But essentially untouchable, like a symbol. Don't go near him. But Mummy! He's probably got fleas. Much worse, I'm afraid. He's filthy Lucifer, once rich and handsome, gyrating like a sycamore seed in madness from some blissful tree of green security, to peddle a notion of freedom to those who stand in chains at their painted garden gates, while down some Kentish lane his clattering ghost will forever bear the folded evening on his handlebars to some quiet hayloft amid the scented fields.